welcome to this another episode of ECCB Connects. Remember, ECCB Connects is produced by the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank to share with you who we are, what we do, and how we serve you. In this week's program, we bring you part 2 of Governor Antoine's country outreach engagement with the media in Antigua and Barbuda. Governor Antoine responded to questions regarding the ECCU Credit Bureau, the Eastern Caribbean Partial Credit Guarantee Corporation, fiscal and debt sustainability, and how the people of Antigua and Barbuda can get a better feel of the country's economic growth.
I've seen indications that the bank is considering move to digital currency. I'd like to hear some more about that.
We do recognize the role of financial technology, fintech as it's popularly referred to, in development. We believe that blockchain technology has potential to help transform our economies. And I want to make sure I make the distinction between blockchain and Bitcoin. I have no comment on Bitcoin per se. I think caution is required. But blockchain, which is the distributed ledger technology, that is the basic IT infrastructure that you use on which you have currencies like Bitcoin and Ethereum and Ripple and Litecoin and so on. There is potential, I think, in blockchain. And we at the ECCB are now considering a pilot on blockchain technology. There are 3 use cases that we are considering. Can blockchain technology help us with the issue of de-risking, what we talked about earlier, the loss of correspondent banking relations? Secondly, how can it help to speed up payments and transfers in the ECCU? I find it still takes too long to make payments in the region. Whether that is by transfers or by checks, it takes too long. Time is money. We're talking about competitiveness. So every person who makes that transfer, if you're sending country from one country to the next within the ECCU, you want to get the money the same day. We need to be able to do that. And we also need to make sure that it's done at a cheaper rate. It's still, in my view, too costly to do these transfers. So we think blockchain may help with that. And the third area is digital currency. We may, in fact, be able to have a digital EC dollar. That is something that we're prepared to look at. So over the next few weeks, we're going to be finalizing our arrangements, and then we'll be coming to the public to indicate that we are starting to launch the pilot, to test and to learn. As a leading central bank in the region, we think it's our duty now to look at it and to be able to assess, because ultimately the adoption speed of financial technology in the ECCU will in part be influenced by the central bank. In other words, until and unless there is some regulatory parameter, some regulatory environment for these things to operate, they will have a hard time going forward. So it is our responsibility, both from the point of view of improving or encouraging innovation and at the same time protecting the financial system, the soundness of the system, that we take an initiative, which is why we are pursuing the pilot.
The partial credit guarantee system, do you have a timeline within which you, at least a preliminary timeline for that? And what about the timeline for the credit bureau? Well, here in Antigua and Barbuda, passed in both houses, but still not given the assent by the Governor General. But in terms of timelines for both?
The pilot will happen. We want to launch that in the first half of this year. The partial credit guarantee scheme, we are targeting to start that in July of this year. 5 of our countries have passed the legislation, including Antigua and Barbuda. On the credit bureau, 3 countries have passed it, including Antigua and Barbuda. St. Vincent and Grenadines, Grenada have also passed. We need the other countries to pass. So in all probability, the credit bureau will come on stream next year, because we need to make sure the legislation is passed. I do want to give credit to Antigua and Barbuda for passing the legislation. You know, in this regional environment, to get things done, we have to pass laws. And it's 8 members. And it takes time. But I must say Antigua and Barbuda has been extremely forthcoming on legislation. In other words, once a monetary council decides or recommends, I want to thank the country and the government for taking forward the legislation. So Antigua and Barbuda has already passed both pieces of legislation.
The possibility of using some of the foreign reserves, which have significantly backed the currency much higher than what is required for some sort of economic stimulus program, if I hope I paraphrase it right. Is that too risky, even though you had the caveat that, look, your primary function, your primary remit is really monetary stability in the ECCU and the financial sector stability? Is that not going too far from your core remit?
No, it's not. We have profound respect for the founding fathers of our currency union. The crafters and framers put it in there for a good reason. And therefore, it is now time for us to take a look at it. We think we have an obligation to do that. Whatever our final decision, and obviously it will be a decision of the Monetary Council, we are duty bound to take a look at it. Because, you know, at a time when we're hearing about America first, and we're hearing about Brexit, we do have to ask ourselves, what are we doing for ourselves? What else can we do? We really must. So at this moment, we have, 41, 42 years now of monetary stability. The currency is extremely well backed. Maybe now is the time to take a look. Today we backed at 97%. Let's say, for example, let's take 10%. So we take the backing down to 87%. We're still well above the 60% benchmark. Can we deploy that 10% for key regional economic activities that will boost our regional economy? I think we have an obligation to explore it. Ultimately, we are going to decide, and I want to assure you, we are going to be very prudent. But I do believe you have to mix prudence with enterprise. At the end of the day, fortune favors the brave. So we will see. So we're going to do our homework and we'll see where we are.
Fiscal resilience legislation. And I recall during this budget presentation, the Prime Minister saying that they achieved what they did without such legislation. I'm wondering if representation was made to the government on the adoption of such legislation, and what was the feedback or the reaction to such legislation?
Yes, we have raised this issue of fiscal resilience legislation, sometimes called responsibility legislation, with the government of Antigua and Barbuda and all of our governments. It's something that I feel strongly about, and I have been advocating across the currency union. And I think the government of Antigua and Barbuda is looking at this issue. They've not given me a firm position on it. We're having the conversation, and I think, frankly spoken, it's an important framework which needs to be discussed. So I am happy that we've started the conversation. My hope would be that governments see it not as something that will reduce flexibility, but in fact increase flexibility, especially when there's a shock. Because that's really the beauty of that framework. It is when you are in a challenging period that the framework really shows its best self. And so we're working with the countries. I mean, this is early days, and we continue to have the dialogue. And I think as people see it work in other countries, for example, it's already in Grenada, then I think people can draw their own lessons from those experiences as well.
In terms of the AML CFT legislation, or the assumption of that responsibility in the ECCB, is that a tacit admission that the indigenous banks have been failing on this? Are you doing it? When are you going to be doing it? What's the timeline for that? And also, the debt situation, you have some concerns about the sustainability of the debt and some of the fiscal plans here in Antigua, and you're working with the government. But doesn't that seem to be a little bit antithetical to the reality, which is that the debt to GDP ratio has been falling significantly over the past 3 to 4 years, and that it is now at, well, you say 79, the government says 75%. So why would you be concerned if the trajectory is going down?
Whether it's the global financial crisis or it's a hurricane, that is the part that can undermine everything that you've done. And that is why, if the economy is growing, the debt to GDP ratio should be falling, assuming that the debt is managed reasonably well. But in the event of a shock or a disaster, that can disrupt everything. And that is why you have to pay attention to the fiscal. That is why you cannot assume growth will continue indefinitely, because something external to you can interrupt and disrupt your growth trajectory. And when that happens, you have to fall back on your fiscal. So it is basically our vulnerability that causes me to continually push this fiscal, the notion of fiscal resilience and the need for us to be prudent on the fiscal side, and or volatility, because you want to avoid the swings, the ups and downs. You want to minimize that, because when that happens, it's hardship on the population. Now, on the AML-CFT question, we read the international community and recognize that given the reputation of the central bank, our strong reputation internationally, it made sense for us to take responsibility for AML-CFT for the entities that we regulate, which are our banks, because we felt that that would give additional comfort and confidence to the correspondent banks. And we are in touch with them. And I must tell you, since that decision by the Monetary Council in July 2016, that has been strongly welcomed by the international community. We will continue to work with the national regulators. So for example, with the ONDCP, we are finalizing, and in fact we will soon sign an MOU with the ONDCP that will allow us to continue to work together, to do, for example, joint inspections, joint training, and collaboration. So we think that partnership will strengthen AML-CFT in Antigua and Barbuda and across the ECCU, building on the good work that the ONDCP has done.
I just want to ask finally the Governor, what has been, in your view, the most significant fiscal or monetary advance that Antigua has made over the last 3 to 4 years?
It has to be the financial sector. I mean, there's no question that I think everyone knows of the difficulties in the banking system here. And when we look, 3, 4 years on, 5 years on, to the improvements we've seen in terms of the capital adequacy of the banks, in terms of the NPLs, and in terms of the performance of the banks, profitability, among other things, there's no question, because we went through a difficult and challenging period. And I think it's a credit to the country, Antigua and Barbuda, of course, the central bank, the Monetary Council, that we are where we are now in terms of progress. So that stands out for me. The financial system today is stronger here than it was 5 years ago, without a doubt. The growth performance obviously has improved. That is encouraging. The fiscal, we know, has work to do, and we want to continue to work with the government on that. So the financial stands out for me as clearly an area, and of course the growth performance, that is very encouraging.
You're watching ECCB Connects, protecting our currency, developing our region. To view any episode of ECCB Connects anytime, any place, at your convenience, check us out on YouTube or Facebook at ECCB Connects.
Here's where we end this week's episode of ECCB Connects. Remember to like us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel, ECCB Connects. Thank you very much for watching, and do join us again next week when we'll be back with another program.